China has thanked or appealed to, quote, fellow countrymen or women or Chinese people in Taiwan. Take a look.
坚定不移推进祖国统一大业，携手共创民主复兴伟业。
China's Premier Li Qiang made the remarks in his speech to the annual two sessions of the National People's Congress and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. How significant is the change in language? And why has Beijing lashed out over Marco Rubio's comments when he was asked whether the US would defend Taiwan? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ian Kavat. To discuss this and more are Mu-min Chen, National Zhongxing University Professor of Graduate Institute of International Politics, and Yan Zhengsen, National Zhengzhou University Professor of Political Science. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. But first, on the sidelines of the same CCP event, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang went on to claim,
实现祖国完全统一是全体中华儿女的共同愿望，是大势所趋，大义所在。台独分裂只会玩火自焚，以台制华无异于螳臂挡车，中国终将统一。
Before these remarks, experts said Chinese Premier Li Qiang's government work report presented on the first day of two sessions placed greater emphasis on the promotion and integration and unification of Taiwan with China. Take a look.
我们要坚持贯彻新时代党解决台湾问题的总体方略，坚持一个中国原则和9·2共识，坚决反对台独分裂和外部势力干涉。 推动两岸关系和平发展，完善促进两岸经济文化交流合作机制和政策，坚定不移推进祖国统一大业，携手共创民主复兴伟业。
So, Professor Yan, how do you interpret the Taiwan comments at two sessions?
Oh, I think it's always going to be mentioned, or always going to be some kind of, I call it optics, because politics is optics. You want to present the imagery of, you being tough on Taiwan. You always never going to forsaken this particular kind of pursuit. And they will repeat. I mean, I have heard this for the last 30 years. So
no difference in the substance or the tone?
To me, there is no difference, unless they begin to talk about different things. Right now, what I heard, no matter what it is, from Hu Jintao, or, from Wen Jiabao, all the way now, it's similar, okay? Maybe, you would say different leaders might present a different, image, but that's it. The substance is always the same. I don't think Beijing is going to change its attitude. But it depends on something. Like, I still remember in 1995, 1996, when we have the Taiwan Strait crisis, and that's, in the summer of 1996, and then during the two sessions in March, I remember they purposely show some of the, I call them military general, warlord type, sitting there. They say, Taiwan, yeah, you should fight them, kind of very strong. But other times they don't show this kind of, very aggressive actions or talks. So it depends, but the substance is the same.
Okay. Professor Chen, would you agree with that? I also want you to address the naming of Chinese people in Taiwan. This was picked up as different to last year, fellow countrymen and women in Taiwan, and calling on them to help with the reunification.
Yeah, I think that what the Chinese leaders, call, Taiwanese countrymen, from Taiwan perspective, it's hard to believe that they are really treating us as a compatriots. You see that what China did on Taiwan in the past years, that is, on the one hand, they say unification is unstoppable, and then they also conduct a lot of military exercise around Taiwan, but they never respect Taiwan's existence. And here in Taiwan, I think it's very clear that the majority of the people believe that that we are Taiwanese and keeping the status quo meet Taiwan's interests. And Chinese government, Chinese leader, they never pay attention to our points. I think that that no matter what they say, on Taiwan and calling unification is necessary, I think that nobody in Taiwan really believes that.
Professor Yan, I mean, obviously there's a CCP speech, so we hear a lot about the Chinese people, what they want, their will. No mention of Taiwanese will. Could you tell our audience what the majority of Taiwanese want?
Well, because what happened is way back in the Ye Jianying's 9 points, or Jiang Zemin's 8 points, they talk about, especially Jiang Zemin's 8 point, talk about Chinese will not fight against Chinese. So if we don't, I mean, if we shed our identification of China or Chinese, then it's almost being justified. They said, if you don't recognize your Chinese-ness, then, we don't have to respect Jiang Zemin's 8 points. But at the same time, I think they are trying to say, hey, if you still acknowledge you are being Chinese and Taiwanese, then this is not a major problem. But they don't want Taiwan to completely, we call de-Sinization, that is totally get rid of the Chinese culture, tradition, and everything. So that's, I think, what they're trying to do. But this is also a sensitive issue in Taiwan as well, because there are, still some Chinese traditions that we, even though a lot of people aspire to have Taiwan independence or Taiwan identification, but you still cannot separate yourself from the Chinese tradition sometimes. So I think that they are trying to take advantage of that link there and try to convince Taiwan.
Yeah. I think the term Chinese right now already been politicized, and when Chinese use the term, and when the international society see this term, Chinese, it means PRC citizens. That is something that people in Taiwan don't agree.
And because there is a proxy, isn't it, there's going on for China wants Taiwanese to call themselves Chinese. They also want to control Taiwan and make it Chinese. So there's a danger there.
Well, they try to do that, but so far I think that, of course, in Taiwan we don't really have a consensus about about identity. Some people prefer to be called Chinese, some prefer to be called Taiwanese. But Taiwan is a democracy. We are okay with that. We can sit together even we have a different identity. But in China, everything is politicized, and when you have to agree with what government said, and what Chinese government right now is doing and try to convince the Taiwanese people, I think they can only attract some Taiwanese who live and working in China.
Because I wanted to get back, Professor Chen, to my question, which was, what does the majority of Taiwanese want in terms of?
Yeah, I think it's very simple. Taiwanese people, they want peace, they want a status quo. And of course, we know that there is no consensus about national identity. But of course, the majority of people on Taiwan prefer to be called as Taiwanese.
Okay.
Again, this is always my argument, is people prefer status quo in Taiwan. But what's the means to achieve that status quo? If we want to achieve status quo, I think we cannot just share the Chinese identity at all. Even though we call Huaren instead of 中国人, but still there's something there that the link is going to be maintained. That is how we can maintain status.
Do you acknowledge that there is the difficulty, there is the...
Yeah, but because we want status quo. If we want independence, we declare, fine. But
I think we already say that we are independent de facto.
Yeah, but we still claim we want status quo right now, right? So if we want to maintain that status quo and we don't want conflict across the Taiwan Strait, then the simple...
Then we have to call ourselves Chinese.
No, the simple acknowledgement is being Huaren, that's okay, right? Okay. So
can I ask
you
what
can have
do you think...
a basis of conversation and communication.
Professor Chen?
Well, I think that in the past 30 years, the society of Taiwan have changed a lot. When we said that we want to keep the status quo, it's because that China want to change the status quo right now. More military exercise around Taiwan, that is a signal. So that is why we keep talking, we want status quo. Yeah, and it has nothing to do with our identity. I think identity okay. That is, Taiwanese people are very tolerant, and no matter what you say, Taiwanese Chinese, I think the people can tolerate that.
Okay. Yeah. Now, Beijing has protested to Washington over comments made by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in an interview with Catherine Herridge on February 20th. Rubio was asked whether the U.S. would defend Taiwan from Beijing. Take a look.
We don't want to see a conflict, but we have made very clear through years and years of our policies, the 6 assurances, the Taiwan Relations Act, that we are against any sort of change in status by force or by threat or by coercion, and that remains our policy. And that's generally how we've left it, and that's what's provided stability. We are not going to walk away from, for example, supporting Taiwan being involved in international forums where their views and their interests are not represented by the mainland at this point. So we're going to keep all the commitments we've made, but the most important one is to make clear that we are against and oppose any sort of forced change in status.
Later, Rubio told Fox News the best way to prevent a possible attack from Beijing was to have, quote, military capability for the US. Beijing protested with this, quote, if the US side does not want to trigger a conflict, it should stop crossing the line on the Taiwan issue. So, Professor Yan, can you tell us what is the line that it's crossing? Did Rubio say anything that's different to US policy?
I think Rubio is actually kind of backtrack from Joe Biden's position. Joe Biden is even, stronger. But Rubio, because he is a persona non grata in China, so China always didn't like him, and whatever he said, will be taken, literally.
Does it veer away from U.S. policy, though, what he said?
No, it didn't. Okay, but the question I have is, when Rubio said that, when China is trying to accuse him, basically lecturing him, I want to see Donald Trump stand up for Marco Rubio, but so far I haven't. So China probably knew that Donald Trump is the one that has to deal with. So even though Marco Rubio is supposed to be the person responsible for foreign policy, for China policy, and China probably will ignore him.
So do you believe that they're trying to drive a wedge between Rubio and Trump?
Yeah, I think this totally is true, because whatever Rubio has in mind, he has been in the Foreign Relations Committee for quite a while. He's the chairman, so he knows a lot of things. But Donald Trump thinks he knows everything. So I think this is what China is trying to play a wedge between the two.
Okay, Professor Chen, how do you interpret? I mean, are there different stances between Rubio and Trump? And how do you interpret that?
No, I think that right now we still don't know what is Trump's position on Taiwan issue. Media try to ask him question like this, but he never give a clear response. But I think Rubio's comments basically is a continuation of the U.S. policy on Taiwan. That is, we support Taiwan democracy, we support Taiwan's defense. We don't want we want a status quo.
Nothing to be changed by force, as you said.
Yeah.
So, Professor Chen, staying on you, do you believe perhaps there's a little bit more to China's sort of, attack on Rubio? Are they hoping that, that everybody in his administration would shift? Have they perceived perhaps a shift on Ukraine, and they are hoping that there might be a shift?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe. I think right now that everyone are still asking what is Donald Trump's position on Taiwan, what's Donald Trump's position on Asia. So I think China, this is probably one strategy used by China to keep pushing the U.S. government and to figure out what is Donald's real intention on China. Because we now know that at least Donald Trump is playing very tough on China on the tariff and the trade issues. And how about the security strategic issues? We still don't know. I think it is probably one of the strategies used by Chinese government to do that.
Okay. Now this year marks the 20th anniversary of China's anti-secession law, in which Beijing authorizes the use of force if Taiwan declares independence or if so-called reunification becomes impossible. At the two sessions, a panel meeting was told by Chinese deputies so-called representing Taiwan they wanted to tell Taiwanese to, quote, invest in and build a life in China. In February, Beijing rolled out its fourth package of policies designed to lure Taiwanese to China. The measures target industrial design businesses as well as Matsu-based enterprises to engage in the Chinese coastal province of Fujian. They plan to attract Taiwanese who want to establish Chinese-based radio and television production firms, as well as those in agriculture, forestry and fishery sectors, and those in the lithium battery industry. Beijing is encouraging Taiwanese to, quote, redeem and replace Taiwan resident certificates online and establish service hotspots hotlines for marriage and family services between Fujian and Taiwan. All of these facts are according to Chinese state media, the Global Times. Professor Yan, what is the significance of these measures? And in particular, could you tell our audience what the final sentence, which is redeem and replace Taiwan residence certificates online, what does that mean?
Okay, for those people who have, doing business there, they have relatives there, or let me put it this way, a lot of academic people who couldn't find jobs in Taiwan, they are teaching in China. And I think what they will find that it will probably be something they will have to do in order to continue their teaching position in China, to show some kind of support for a policy that has been issued by Beijing. But for anyone, people like me who only travel to China, maybe for tourism or for some kind of academic meeting, but I don't have any vested interest in China, fine. We don't have to do anything like that. But for other people, if you do have investment, if you do have a company, if you do have family members, I think this is what they probably will find it a little bit convenient for them, even though this might be in contradiction to Taiwan's policy. So it would be very difficult for those people, including, I think recently we have some controversy about the entertainers who show loyalty to Beijing and then continue to be Taiwan citizens. So there are some of those. But for majority of the Taiwanese people, if you only just like Professor Yan, only being sometimes being a tourist, sometimes just visit there, but without vested interest, then this policy doesn't apply to you.
Yeah. Professor Chen, let me just quote what Li Qiang has said about this. He's warned Taiwanese not to sacrifice long-term safety for short-term gains. He said democracy is priceless and freedom is not a currency to trade. Why is he so worried about this?
Well, because one strategy China has been doing and using is to use economic interest to attract Taiwan to shift the loyalty, from Taiwan to China. And I think it worked for some people, particularly like Professor Yan just said, that those who have invested in China, those who work in China, and for these people, perhaps in future, that they will spend the rest of life in China.
And that's why they want to recruit more numbers to invest in.
Yeah, but I think for the majority people in Taiwan, that this is not, they are not interested at all.
The only group I worry is about, high, professors in Taiwan who couldn't find jobs
but it's
in
a
Taiwan.
Small number.
Yeah, but still number. But in China, hundreds, thousands. My student, they have a line groups that is hundreds, almost 1,000 Taiwanese professors in China. So Taiwan has to come up big for the job market to keep our best people here. Otherwise, I don't want to condemn them for going there, because you don't want your career to be interrupted if you couldn't find a teaching position here.
No, I think one reason China has been doing is that because you see this year is 2 sessions, they are Taiwan delegates, but these Taiwan delegates are not real Taiwanese. They were like a second generation, Taiwanese. So I think China in future they probably try to recruit some Taiwanese who were born and grew up in Taiwan and to become Chinese citizens. Then they could make these the delegates for the 2 sessions and say that okay, yeah, these Taiwanese people are loyal to us. This is what they are doing right now.
Right. Yeah. And Professor Yan, so it doesn't appear that Beijing thinks that unification is impossible. I mean, it's continuing to roll out these incentives. It's also, the talk about thanking the Taiwan compatriots. So it seems that they do believe that possibility is still
I think,
open.
if they look at the inside of Taiwan, maybe they think it's, really drifting away. But the international reality, especially Donald Trump's position on Ukraine, might give them some kind of encouragement that they can do something here. Just like I said, also Donald Trump, if he only care about his own Western hemisphere, then in exchange, China said, okay, we're going to come out of Panama. We're not going to be, challenging you in Latin America, but here, you also respect us. This is what I think China is waiting right now.
Yeah.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi accused the United States of what he called a, quote, two-faced approach, saying no country should expect to suppress and contain China on one hand, while developing a good relationship with it on another. He went on,
大国应当承担国际义务，履行好大国担当，不能唯利是图，更不能恃强凌弱。
Professor Chen, so what's your assessment of these comments of bullying, two-facedness, global responsibilities coming from China?
It's nothing new, because you know that Wang Yi is a Chinese foreign minister. So right now that China's international image is quite negative, and they are facing more problems with the U.S. So I think that the only way for him to maintain their influence is to play tough. Yeah.
Is there hypocrisy, do you think, in those things that they've leveled at the U.S.?
No, I think that they have their own political purpose, because when China talk about Taiwan, when they talk about relations, between both sides, they always ignore the will of the Taiwanese people, and they always interpret the bilateral relations in Chinese terms, which is totally ignore and downgrade Taiwan's existence.
Getting back to the question, I was actually referring to the South China Sea and China's own coercion and bullying of the claimant states there, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia. Would they consider that China is the one who's the bully?
Well, I think what they would try, to compare the two is like, if you want to condemn China, then you have to also condemn the U.S. as well, especially Donald Trump in so-called the Western Hemisphere, in terms of Panama Canal, in terms of changing the water of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, in terms of trying to acquire Greenland.
Okay, so Professor Chen, getting back to China's comments, so Wang Yi's comments, isn't China also very good at compartmentalizing the economy versus territorial disputes in the South China Sea? Very good at decoupling these issues.
I think they are trying, but it's not easy. No country could make a clear distinction, between your territorial claims and getting economic profits. And the reason that most countries in the region want to do business with China in the past decades is that China tried to show their peaceful and positive image. That they say, okay, let's do business, and that you come invest, and also we could do trade, and we both prosper together. But as long as China right now becoming more assertive in their territorial claims, I think that they will lose more trust from the neighboring countries. Not just Southeast Asia. You look at Taiwan, Japan, India, it's all the same.
So in terms of Wang Yi talking about the two-faced approach by the US, and Professor just mentioned that, in fact, Donald Trump so far has put tariffs on and act tough with neighbors, allies, as well as perhaps rivals. So is there a two-facedness in Wang Yi's comments?
No, I think that in Chinese foreign policy, they always sometimes use this, bullying strategy. That is, they try to show their toughness. And sometimes it works, particularly when China faces a weaker partner. And sometimes you play tough, that the people will say, oh, okay, China is too powerful, and then we'd better, not to challenge. But the U.S. is a different player. That by playing tough, I don't think that China will get the result they want.
Okay. We'll have to end it there. Thank you, Chen Mu-min and Yan Zhengsen for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.